Just weeks before my wedding, my best friend of 17 years borrowed my fiancé for a week. They kissed, held each other, and burned with passion in some faraway place. After 7 days, she promised to return him, as if a man's heart could be passed back like a borrowed book. The idea was absurd, terrifying. Trash I had struggled to throw away was being recycled right before my eyes. After my bachelorette party, Ethan Walker came to pick me up. Across the room, Sienna Brooks's cheeks were flushed, her glass raised toward us with a wobbly smile. She drank more than I had that night, her eyes glistening as she said, "True love finally gets its happy ending." Ethan wrapped an arm around my waist, but kept his gaze on her for far too long. With his free hand, he took the champagne from hers and downed it. Moments later, the alcohol overpowered me. When I woke, I was in the small apartment Ethan and I shared in Chicago. Morning light spilled through the window, the bed neatly made beneath me. From the kitchen came the sound of simmering broth as Ethan cooked hangover soup. In that moment, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. A week later, I learned how wrong I was. I watched the footage on my phone in disbelief. Ethan and Sienna kissing deeply, his arms under her knees as he carried her into a bedroom. She rested her head against his chest like it belonged there. My fiancé of 5 years, my friend of nearly 2 decades. The blow hit like a slap to the face, the world tilting violently. Their touches, their glances were full of unspoken devotion. And me, was I just a prop in their private play? I sat in the living room and called Ethan. We had been together so long, talked about marriage for months. This wasn't some romantic comedy where I could just curse the cheater and slam the door. A part of me wanted to believe maybe it was just drunken stupidity. Maybe I was overreacting. But he ignored 3 calls in a row. He had told me his company was working on a major project, and he was too busy to answer texts, often coming home late. I had always been the understanding fiancé, never nagging, never doubting him. But now my trust cracked under the mechanical voice, repeating that the person I was calling was unavailable. My mind drifted to the early days. I had always been quiet, reserved, orphaned young with no one close but Sienna. Ethan had pursued me, the charming residential advisor in college. He was a southern boy with warm brown eyes, a gentle smile, a slight crooked tooth, and a way of making everyone like him. He claimed he had noticed me long before I noticed him, back when I was too busy with Sienna to think about dating. One day after a break, I returned to campus, dragging a heavy suitcase. Ethan happened to be there. He took my bag without asking instead why no one had brought me back. I told him about my parents. He said nothing, just walked beside me to my dorm. When I turned to leave, he called me back. Standing in the sunlight, he asked quietly, "Can I be the one you lean on?" He looked so casual, but I saw the faint blush on his cheeks. We started dating soon after. I finally had someone besides Sienna who mattered. Later, Ethan told me what he had really wanted to say that day was, "Can I be your family?" But he had been afraid to scare me. He said it again years later when he proposed, promising to always be my home. The day I introduced him to Sienna, the sky was gray. People joked online that a best friend is like a mother-in-law, always disapproving of the boyfriend. Sienna fit that perfectly. We met at a barbecue joint near campus. She had been cramming for finals, her hair unwashed in an oversized t-shirt and flip-flops, her face pale from sleepless nights. I was glowing in the early rush of love, carefully dressed and made up. She slid into the seat beside me, pushing Ethan to the opposite side, eyeing him from head to toe before saying, "So this is your boyfriend." Her disdain was so obvious, Ethan's own greeting lacked warmth. When I once asked Ethan what he thought of my best friend, he winced and said she seemed a little sloppy, not very feminine. I told him she had grown up with me, that both of them were the most important people in my life, and they had to get along. I never imagined that one day these 2 people I trusted most would betray me together. I kept calling him over and over, wondering if that night's kiss was just a coincidence or if it had started long before. Was it the day I introduced them, or when I insisted Sienna be my maid of honor, working side by side with Ethan to plan the wedding? Eventually, the cold voice on the other end announced that his phone was off. My hands shook as I dialed Sienna. Ring after ring, no answer. My chest sank. I shot to my feet, yanked the engagement ring off, and hurled it. It bounced off the glass coffee table, hitting the floor with a sharp, ugly sound. I wanted to know in the moment when I was drunk and unconscious. As they kissed with fevered urgency, did they feel even a flicker of guilt? Or was it only the thrill, the rush, the intoxicating secrecy? My phone rang. It was Lauren Mitchell, my manager. Madison. Have you decided yet? This business trip to Chicago is a big opportunity. Are you really turning it down? I had rejected it before because of wedding preparations. My voice trembled as I told her to book me a ticket. I could not stay another second. When Ethan's WeChat messages came, I was already waking in a Chicago hotel room. Babe, sorry. Yesterday I was so busy in meetings, my phone died, didn't even realize. You didn't wait up for me, did you? I told you I'm swamped. Today I have to fly to Los Angeles for work. Can you pack my things and bring them to the office? Why aren't you answering? You're not mad, right? My job is exhausting. Can't you be more understanding? Fine. I'll just buy new clothes there. You're so emotional sometimes. I worry about our marriage. His messages poured in not with remorse, but with blame. I stared at the phone, trying to remember the man who used to love me so deeply. I had never doubted his love before. 2 years earlier, we'd had an incident that had convinced me I would love him forever. He had a dinner that night, and I had decided to surprise him. When I called, he stepped out of a restaurant looking annoyed that I had come unannounced. A man brushed past me, hard, making me stumble. When I looked up into his face, his eyes were sharp and menacing. He didn't apologize, just kept walking. Ethan passed him, froze, then grabbed his shoulder. Apologize to my girlfriend, he demanded. The man punched him and the two started fighting. I screamed, barely managing to call the police. Later we learned the man was a wanted criminal, whose face had been plastered on posters I had ignored. You could have been hurt, I sobbed, hitting Ethan's chest. He only said after a long pause, I didn't think. I just didn't want you to suffer even a little injustice. That night I swore I would love him for the rest of my life. But work began to consume him. A gap formed between us. He said it was for our future, that this was his time to advance. Slowly he stopped checking in, stopped inviting me to gatherings, stopped being the man who worried about me being alone. We argued sometimes, but he always ended it with an embrace and an apology. Back then, neither of us ever imagined breaking up. Last night, after all those unanswered calls, his casual text messages had been enough to quiet the storm for a moment. Now they only echoed in the empty space where my love had been. I wondered how long it would take for Ethan to notice I was gone. The night I flew to Chicago, I didn't just leave town, I stripped every trace of myself from that apartment. In the dark, I shipped box after box to a friend's place, erasing our home piece by piece. I couldn't breathe in that space anymore. The bathroom still held our matching toothbrushes and cups, his razor resting beside my skincare, his shirts pressed against my dresses in the closet. Just one more glance at it all made my chest tighten. I didn't answer his messages, but soon my phone lit up with a call from Sienna. Her voice was cheerful, almost too bright. Madison, you called me last night with something up. I hesitated, then asked quietly, Is there something you haven't told me? Even now I was spineless enough to hope she'd just admit it was a drunken mistake so I could salvage the friendship. Instead, she laughed. So you figured it out. I'm going on a trip. Don't miss me too much. My heart clenched. After a pause, I said, Really funny. Ethan's on a business trip too. What city are you going to? She hesitated, then replied, Los Angeles. I knew her well enough to hear the lie in her voice. Well then, I said softly, I hope you have fun. I hope you both have all the fun in the world. Maybe it was the heartbreak, but in Chicago my work schedule filled up so completely, I didn't have time to dwell. I never told Ethan directly what I knew. I just began canceling wedding plans in silence. He had always claimed he was too busy to help, assuring me that I could arrange everything however I liked, and he'd simply pay for it. Now his absence was convenient. On my second night there, I got a notification from a couples-only restaurant in Seattle. He must have forgotten that his reservation account was still linked to my number. The place was perched on the top of the tallest observation tower, with one of the best chefs in the country. When his career first took off, he had gotten his first big bonus and insisted on taking me there. That night, years ago, we froze when we saw the menu. The waiter stood nearby, polite but with eyes that hinted we didn't belong there. The tension made us avoid looking up. Ethan ordered the cheapest entree, and we shared it. We even tried the rose petals served on the side, and he whispered in my ear, One day when we have money, we'll come back and eat until we're full. Now, staring at that reservation, I laughed until my eyes burned. How could I have ever believed he'd treasure that memory with me alone? Sienna had built a small following online, addicted to documenting every moment. I searched for the restaurant's name and scrolled through every post. Finally, I found it half an hour ago from an account called Secret Confessions. A photo of a man's hands peeling shrimp. Near his thumb was a scar I knew too well, left from a fight 2 years ago. It was Ethan. The caption read, "I'm only borrowing him for a short week. In 7 days, I'll return him to her." The comments were full of speculation. Some called her a homewrecker. Others romanticized it, cheering them on. Curious, I clicked the profile. Over 50,000 followers. The account was older than I expected. I'd spent 18 years believing Sienna and I were like family. I never imagined she would one day see sharing my fiancé as an acceptable game. Sienna and I had always been opposites. She was outgoing, animated the life of every room, while I was quiet, steady, content to stay in the background. As teenagers, she chased away the boys who teased me, and I helped her study for the English exams she hated. We balanced each other, two halves of a whole, friends from childhood who did everything together. We even went to the bathroom together, like two souls sharing different bodies, whispering secrets only we would ever know. My hands trembled as I held the phone, unable to reconcile the girl I grew up with and the woman who now thought it was fine for us to share my fiancé. In her secret online diary, she wrote about the first time I brought Ethan to meet her back in our sophomore year. "How could a campus heartthrob be dating her?" she wrote. She didn't warn me, so I showed up in an oversized t-shirt, hair messy, barefaced, while she appeared like a little princess. Under the post, someone commented that it sounded like a psychological game between women. Sienna replied with a dog emoji, offering no denial. There was the rainy day she forgot her umbrella, and I asked Ethan to give her a ride. She wrote, "Sat in the passenger seat next to him." We secretly exchanged numbers. She implied I didn't care about my own boyfriend, as if leaving them alone together was an open invitation. When I was sick, they came to take care of me. Ethan cooked porridge for her first, then made some for me as an afterthought. While she slept, he and I whispered, and all the while she was secretly adding him on her private account, keeping their own conversations hidden. Sienna once bragged, "We both added each other using our backup accounts. That must mean we're meant to be." Many of her posts blurred out their messages, but made it clear they shared the same type of work and often discussed career goals. She cheered for him unconditionally. Ethan once told her, "You're the most special person I've ever met." On Valentine's Day, she secretly sent him a gift, but refused to accept one from him, saying she didn't want him to spend too much or tire himself picking out 2 presents. He never confessed his feelings outright, and neither did she, but each of her posts stressed that she was only given these opportunities by her best friend. Trips she took with him were framed as experiences she was having on my behalf. Gifts given as thanks for me letting her borrow him. Her words painted me as lazy, spoiled, a vain rival. And beneath that fragile disguise, they indulged in the thrill of a forbidden connection. On her birthday, I had given her an expensive perfume. The next day, she wore it to a haunted house, with Ethan leaping into his arms and asking, "Do you like how I smell? Your girlfriend has such good taste." She even posted a photo of the 3 of us eating together, their hands hidden and clasped beneath the table. 2 years ago, when Ethan leapt to protect someone, it wasn't me. I had always believed that night's fight outside the restaurant was about me, but in her telling, it was her he shielded. She described the moment online as if it proved their bond. Reading it, I felt sick. The work dinners and late nights were just their dates. The night I showed up unexpectedly, they scattered like startled animals. She ducked into a nearby alley. He followed, having seen a wanted flyer for a man who attacked women alone. In her post, she described it as a moment of agony, jealous that danger had brought them closer. Her followers numbered in the thousands. That particular post had nearly 1,000 comments, half of them condemning her, half egging her on to follow her heart. And then just last week at my bachelorette party, she published a 1,000-word declaration of her unrequited love, promising herself that if Ethan loved her, he wouldn't refuse her that night. And he hadn't. That day, Ethan kissed her like she was the only woman in the world. Their trip to Seattle, she wrote, was both the first and the last time she would travel with the man she loved. After this, she claimed she would return him to me and bury her feelings forever, as if that was some grand act of mercy. But why should I be the one to recycle someone else's trash? For 7 days, she flooded her feed with over 10 posts retracing the exact places Ethan and I had once been. She said she wanted to feel my life for herself, to visit the restaurants we'd dined in, the hotels we'd stayed at, to taste the meals we'd shared. She wanted to coat all of his memories with her presence so that seeing me would forever remind him of her. I scrolled through each photo, same buildings, same views, like I was punishing myself. And somewhere between the initial disgust and the compulsion to look, the pain dulled. By the third day in Chicago, my boss offered me an olive branch. Madison, you know the management positions at headquarters are saturated, but here your chances to advance are much greater. Do you want to stay? I didn't hesitate. I had turned down countless opportunities in the past just to stay in the same city as Ethan. Thank God it wasn't too late. That same day, their trip ended. Sienna called, her voice tinged with a coy sweetness. Madison, do you want me to bring you anything? I'm at the duty-free shop before my flight. I stirred the ice in my coffee, smiling faintly in my new spacious office. Did you have fun in Los Angeles? I asked. There was a pause before she laughed nervously. What do you mean? You must be mistaken. I told you I went to San Francisco, I said calmly. Put me on speaker. She hesitated. Then I heard the rustle as she did. Hi, Ethan, I said evenly. I wish you two all the happiness in the world. Then I hung up. Let that be the period at the end of their story. I wanted the sword of Damocles to drop to soundtrack their journey home with a goodbye they couldn't ignore, leaving them to wonder just how much I knew. Ethan showed up in Chicago at sunset. I wasn't surprised. The moment he saw the apartment stripped bare, he would have come straight to my office. He stood there, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, stubble rough on his jaw. You know everything, don't you? He asked, his lips trembling as he stepped toward me. I sighed. Let's go to my place. We should end this politely. Back at my rented apartment, as I locked the door, a loud thud made me turn. He was on his knees. Hit me, he pleaded, face twisted with anguish. I was tempted. I made a mistake. When I saw you'd left, I was terrified of losing you. Do whatever you want to me, just don't leave. I felt nothing. What's the point of realizing it now? I asked. Do you know we were only a month away from our wedding? My voice was calm, almost soft, but the words seemed to crush him. He bent forward, covering his face, choking on something between a sob and a gasp. I stepped around him and sat on the sofa. Ethan, we're over. His eyes were red. No, I don't accept that. It was one mistake. I never planned to have anything with her after this trip. You're the only one I want forever. Please believe me. He looked desperate, like a man who truly loved me. I studied him, and for a moment I could almost see the boy who had once meant everything to me. Maybe he had loved me once. Maybe he had wanted a lifetime together. But when the moment came, he chose the thrill of betrayal over the life we'd built. Ethan, I said gently, you're an adult. In that moment, you made your choice. That means we have no future. He stared at me like I was speaking another language. After everything we've been through, buying our home, saving for the wedding, 5 years together, you can just throw it all away. Don't you feel pain? Don't you feel sad? Ethan staggered to his feet, his voice raw. You're really this cold, he thought. My silence meant I felt nothing. I snatched the thick folder from the coffee table and hurled it at him with all my strength. Papers fanned across the floor, page after page of Sienna's posts. One glance and Ethan froze. You want to know when I was hurt, I said, my voice sharp. When you ignored my calls and I had to walk away alone. When you took her to the same fine dining restaurant where you once ordered the cheapest entree for us to share, did she even have to worry about the price? When you brought her to the same 5-star hotel we stayed at, did she know you only managed it with a coupon? When you two wandered around Seattle pretending it was only once, staining every memory we made there. I was alone in Chicago, sleepless for nights, my eyes so swollen in the mornings I could barely see. I looked straight at him. I'm not cold, Ethan. I've just let go. I don't love you anymore. We're finished. I've already survived the worst of it. Like setting a broken bone, it hurt. But it healed. He swayed, muttering, I didn't know she would post it. Please give me a chance to make it right. My face stayed still. I've saved everything she posted. She's a public figure. If you push me, I'll make it all public. His expression shifted instantly. You want to destroy her? He asked. I pulled another document from my bag and placed it in front of him. You can keep the car and the house, but you'll repay me in cash for the renovations and the down payments. You'll also reimburse the wedding deposits as compensation for my time and dignity. 5 years, Ethan. Don't make this uglier than it already is. He signed, his disbelief palpable that I could ever threaten him just to walk away. We had met as innocent college kids, built a life from nothing, scraped and saved for a home, and were weeks from our wedding. He hadn't abandoned me in the hardest years, but when the finish line was in sight, he'd been tempted by the scenery on the side of the road. Some mistakes can't be undone. Sienna's profile picture on my app stopped lighting up. At first, I'd wanted to confront her to shout, but what was the point? I no longer cared about Ethan, and her betrayal didn't matter anymore. Whether she excused it or spun some lie, it was meaningless to me. The moment she posted her first confession online, the friendship we'd had since we were little girls was over. Still, life has a way of pushing filth back to your doorstep. A fan caught Sienna and Ethan entering a hotel together in Seattle. That same day, she trended for showing up to a live stream with red puffy eyes. The internet swarmed, and in hours they dug up old photos of Ethan and me, linking me to her secret confessions account. Most believed it was mine, and the comments made me sick, calling it the mistress's literature, mocking me, asking what Sienna had done to deserve such a terrible friend and a bad man. My personal details were dragged into the open, my accounts overrun. They didn't know I'd erased every trace of Ethan from my social media after we split, so no one realized we had been a real couple. I wasn't seeking revenge, but the storm had reached me anyway. I wasn't going to suffer in silence for people who had wronged me. I began compiling the evidence to tell the truth, but before I could post it, Ethan called. "I'm sorry, Madison," he said carefully. "I've caused you trouble. What are you going to do now?" Ethan's voice was tight, almost pleading. "I'm going to make everything public," I said without hesitation. "No," he snapped, suddenly forceful. "What about Sienna? What will happen to her? What about my life?" I asked, my tone steady. I could hear his breathing quicken on the other end of the line. "You still have me. You and Sienna have been friends for years. Even if you hate each other now, you can't destroy her. Madison, we can still be together. Come back, I'll take care of you." His conviction almost sounded real, but it only made me laugh bitterly. "You're still dreaming. I mean it," he said. But before he could finish, there was a crash, the blare of a car horn, a sharp cry, and the sound of shouting. I lowered my eyes, momentarily startled, but there was no shock, only a strange clarity. Ethan had been in an accident mid-call. I still went to the hospital. He was unconscious, the nurse explaining that it was only a mild brain injury, but that they needed to monitor him. I told her to wait until his family arrived before saying more. Sienna flew in that same afternoon. It was the first time we had faced each other since the truth came out. The hospital hallway was long, full of patients, some arguing with doctors, some crying, some packing to go home. Life was full of things more important than love. She walked past them all and straight toward me. She looked hollow, pale, stripped of the confidence she used to carry like armor. "Madison," her voice was hoarse. I stood nodding toward the room behind me. "Ethan's in there. I'm leaving. Wait." She blocked my path, speaking quickly. "It was all my fault. I was selfish. I destroyed what you had. But Ethan really loves you. He promised me that after you married, we'd never speak again. He hasn't eaten in days. He's exhausted. Please," I cut her off. "Sienna, I don't pick up trash." My voice was like glass, and she stepped back as if it had cut her. "You should start preparing your statement about leaving the industry," I added. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She didn't even have the courage to ask for forgiveness. As we brushed past each other, I thought I heard her whisper, "I'm sorry. Can we still be friends?" But there was no answer. That question, like her apology, vanished into the air. I went home and posted everything I had collected, our engagement photos, testimonies from mutual friends. Pictures of the three of us together. Once admired as a golden couple, our history was easy to prove. The public turned in an instant. They couldn't believe the woman they had idolized was the other woman. Her personal details were leaked. She couldn't find work, couldn't go out without a mask, clinging only to Ethan. But he didn't fare better. This wasn't an era where the man could hide in the shadows while the mistress took all the blame. The company he'd built his career on cut him loose immediately. With no jobs and a mortgage to pay, they were drowning. Sienna spiraled into depression. Ethan tried to reach me again, still desperate to salvage something, but I reported him for harassment. He looked stunned as the police escorted him away. He never came near me again. Even then, calls kept coming from Nathan Brooks, from Sienna's parents, begging me to take down my post. "You and Sienna grew up together," her mother cried. "How can you be so cruel? When we were children, they had treated me well. But when it came to their daughter, right and wrong no longer mattered." I stayed silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "If I were the one going through all of this, No one would speak up for me. I lost my parents when I was young. She's had everything her whole life pampered and protected. Why should I be the one to sacrifice her parents' voices on the other end hardened with resentment? Our biggest regret is not keeping Sienna away from you when you were kids. We should have told her to avoid a girl with no parents. Is that so? I said evenly. What a coincidence. My biggest regret is ever knowing her. Then I hung up. I no longer had the time or interest to dwell on the past, and I certainly had no desire for revenge. My new job in Chicago kept me busy. Every day I was like a spinning top driven forward with no chance to stop. I promised myself I would remain loyal to who I am, living for myself alone. Life is long, and sometimes meeting the wrong person is simply part of it. The important thing is that I was still in time to cut my losses and move forward. You've been listening to Throwing Away the Garbage Fiancé for my best friend on City with Me. And now here's the epilogue. I'm Ethan Walker. Today marks the 5th anniversary of my marriage to Sienna Brooks. Most people would celebrate such a day, but at 3 a.m, I was only just leaving a business dinner, my smile frozen from hours of forced cheer. The cold wind bit at my face as I pulled cash from my pocket to call a car for my boss. When I helped him into the back seat, I bent slightly, plastering on a respectful grin. Sir, about that promotion. Through the haze of cigarette smoke, his face was shadowed, his voice laced with mockery. Ethan, don't waste your time. With your reputation and background, you're lucky the company even keeps you on. I watched the car disappear into the night, the exhaust smoke curling in the air. My phone showed an empty bank account. With no money for a ride, I walked home. 5 years, and I still couldn't land a decent job. Life was hard. I'd given everything to a small company straight out of college, working with them until they went public. But the moment trouble hit, they cut me loose without hesitation. Sienna told me to make noise to fight for my rights. I was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Then why aren't you still working as an influencer?" Her answer was a slap across my face. She trembled as she reached for her pills. Her fear was real. Online, attackers had torn her life apart, plastering her pictures on her apartment door, even sending men to stalk her with the intent to hurt her. They called her trash. Seeing her reduced to a hollow, broken version of herself, I finally couldn't stand by. Exhausted and numb, I said, "I'll marry you." It had nothing to do with love, only responsibility. Looking back, maybe I was pitiful too. We had once left Madison alone at the table while one of us pretended to take a call and the other pretended to pay the bill, only to sneak away to the restaurant bathroom together. We had traveled, told Madison bedtime stories before slipping into each other's rooms, kissing recklessly, with the door wide open, driven by nothing but lust. Back then, it was thrilling, intoxicating. But when Sienna actually became my legal wife, we couldn't even hold a real wedding. We lived like criminals hiding from the world. Coming home was a battle. My feet ached, my stomach twisted. When I opened the door to our small, damp apartment, the air smelled of mold. Sienna stood there in a sheer silk nightgown, but she was so thin her bones jutted sharply under her skin. Her face hollow, her eyes lifeless like a ghost demanding a debt. "Why are you so late?" she asked bitterly. "Do you just not want to come home anymore?" "I'm tired," I sighed. "Can you please stop making a scene?" Her next words sliced through me. "If Madison were the one you'd married, would you treat her like this?" The moment she said Madison's name, something snapped inside me. I grabbed the vase by the door and hurled it across the room. That night in the dark, I lay in bed with Sienna's muffled sobs filling the air. I knew she had lost everything: her career, her fans, her mental stability. I wondered if the blow she had taken earlier had left a scar on her face. She had become like a parasitic vine clinging to me because there was nothing else left for her to hold on to. I tried to remember what had drawn me to her in the first place: independence, energy, boldness. I couldn't stop myself from opening Madison Hayes' social media page. For 5 years, I had been using a hidden account to quietly keep track of her life. She had changed. Her hair was short now, cut clean and neat. She wasn't like Sienna Brooks, who posted endless fragments of her daily life. Madison rarely shared anything personal. Instead, her posts were filled with work insights, study notes, and professional milestones. She had become a strong, self-sufficient woman. If we had stayed together, maybe we would be living in a spacious home, now a place that was truly ours. I'd be driving to a good job every morning. She would be the perfect, loving wife waiting for me at the end of the day. We might even have a child. The page was still loading, and my impatience grew sharp like an itch under my skin. It felt like an addict's craving an ache that wouldn't let me go. When it finally refreshed, it was just a single image, a picture of her holding hands with another man. Something in me snapped. I could hear my own voice, low and dangerous. Go ahead, cry again, see what happens. My reflection in the darkened window looked unrecognizable eyes. Bloodshot face twisted into something far from the confident young man I once was. Sienna let out a short, sharp scream and clawed at my face, her nails aiming for my eyes. The room erupted into chaos. In the struggle, my phone clattered to the floor. I forced her head down, pinning her in place. She caught sight of the phone screen and froze for a moment. Then she started to laugh, a trembling, broken sound. You still can't forget her, can you? She hissed. She twisted under my grip like a fish on a cutting board, her laughter rising into a jagged, piercing cackle. Ethan, you're pathetic. You had her, and you didn't know how to keep her. Why didn't you see it back then? Why didn't you? Her words were knives, and my strength seemed to drain away all at once. Something hot and salty filled my mouth, and I realized with a jolt that I was crying. Crazy. She was still laughing, loud, unhinged, unstoppable. Everything was crazy now. And somehow I knew deep down that my fate was sealed. For the rest of my life, I would be entangled with this madness, chained to a woman who had long since lost herself.